daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Hello and welcome to the Daily Liverpool podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. It is Monday, the 20th of October. Mondays are always tough, but dear me, this one is a tough one. It's the day after Liverpool's third defeat of the Premier League season, their third in a row, and fourth defeat overall in a row. And that against our arch rivals, our bitterest rivals, Manchester United, who won the game at Anfield 2-1. It's literally just could not get worse. I mean, we've got to keep a perspective. And I was at the game on Sunday evening, and it just felt like that's it. It's just the season's over. A bit of time does bring a bit of perspective. I'm still fuming, but not as fuming as I was on Sunday. And whilst I'm not thinking that our season is over, I don't think that any of us are thinking about winning or retaining the Premier League right now. And I'm not ruling that out. I'm not saying that that's not a possibility or that it's just over. But it's just not something that we're thinking about, or certainly not something that I'm thinking about. And I dare say it's probably something that Arnie Slott or the players are thinking about right now. Their only thought right now is, how do we stop this rot? How do we not just win the next game, but how do we not lose the next game? And I think that's a real worry. That's a real concern, because I think once you have a defeat, okay, every team loses, you get 2 on the bounce, and you think, okay, that's another bad result, but the international break is here, players go away, they get refreshed, they go to different environments, different competitions. Most of them came back with positive results, their teams qualifying for the World Cup, or their teams, taking a major step towards the World Cup. And then we come back, first game after the international break. And in fact, the first minute after we come back. And I think here's the issue. The first minute of the game, we concede a goal. And so any benefit that you've had from having a 2-week break, any benefit that you've had from going to a different environment, from meeting up with different players, playing in different surroundings, in a different competition, any of those possible benefits that you might have, that you might have enjoyed in that 2 weeks, evaporates. It's gone. Within 60 seconds, it's gone. And you are back to the team that lost against Chelsea. You're back to the team that lost at Crystal Palace. You're back in that same scenario, in that same situation. And it automatically just becomes an uphill struggle. Even though you're at home, even though you've got your fans behind you, it's just one blow after another. And I mean, let's talk about that first goal. There's a lot of controversy over the McAllister head injury and whether the referee, Michael Oliver, should have stopped the game. I think it's a tough one. I mean, yeah, look, as Liverpool supporters, we would want the game stopped. And it was a genuine head injury. But I've got to be honest here. The reason that we conceded that goal was not because McAllister was on the floor or that the referee didn't stop the game. We conceded that goal because we just didn't react. We didn't react as quick as Mbeumo. He was on the floor. He was on the floor and he got up and got ahead of Virgil van Dijk, who was not on the floor, who hadn't fallen down. He was upright. And so I don't think that we can really point the finger at the referee, even though Michael Oliver didn't have a particularly good game. I mean, I think I've always said that the standard of refereeing in the Premier League, I think, is just probably the worst in my lifetime. So there's no great surprise that you have a poor refereeing display. But in this instance, I've got to say that I really don't see that the referee did something really, really outrageously wrong, because I think in the first instance, when there's a clash of heads, unless it's abundantly clear to the referee and to everyone else that this is a serious head injury, the player is motionless, he's not moving, there have been instances where that's happened, player swallows his tongue, and you can immediately see the reaction of the players around him, and everything just stops. McAllister wasn't in that situation. He was rolling around. Okay, now I'm not saying that in a way that means that he was faking it. He got 4 stitches. It was a nasty blow to the back of the head, but he wasn't knocked out. He wasn't unconscious. And so I think that as a referee, you don't make a split decision. You don't make a decision, right, the player's gone down, he's holding his head, right, stop the game. Because otherwise you'd be stopping the game all the time. And unfortunately, we do see that lots of times, not just in the Premier League, but across modern football, is that players do use that rule cynically. They will go down, let's say, in their own box and at a set piece, knowing that the referee is probably going to stop the game because I'm holding my head, and that neutralizes the opponent's attack. And so I've got to say that I actually don't have a problem with Michael Oliver and that decision, because it was 3 or 4 seconds, and he's played he's just played on. He's let the play on, and we concede, and that goal that we conceded was our fault defensively. We should not be allowing the Manchester United striker to go from pretty much the centre circle unchallenged into our penalty area and, slots the ball away. And so I think that's the first thing that we've got to clear up, is that I do not blame the referee in that first instance. I don't think it was a hugely controversial moment. Yes, there have been times that the referee does stop the game, and we've seen it all the time. But for me, I don't think that's the major issue here. I think the question is, how did this team lose to a Manchester United side that has struggled ever since Ruben Amorim took over about a year ago? So there are a few issues that I think that we need to address, and I think that most of us are aware of it, and you just hope that Arnie Slott is aware of it. The first one is the obvious one, and that is that the new players that have come in just haven't hit the ground running. There's a lot of players in and out, and I remember saying this in the pre-season podcast episode, that although it was exciting, obviously as a supporter, you're always excited that your club is buying new players, particularly for us as Liverpool supporters, we just weren't used to the club going out and buying players left, right, and centre. So for us to be involved in that was exciting. But I do remember distinctly saying that it got to the stage, I think, after we'd signed Wirtz and we'd signed 2 fullbacks. Once we started signing more players like Ekitike and Isak, Mamardashvili is obviously there. I was thinking, I'm just a bit concerned that this has tipped over the edge of what could become now a transition season, because there are just too many new players coming in. And so those new players haven't hit the ground running. Alexander Isak, he is a fantastic striker, and I am sure and I'm convinced that he will come good. But right now, he doesn't look right. His fitness is always going to be obviously questioned because of his decision to go on strike in the summer to force that move from Newcastle to Liverpool. And I think I mentioned this on the episode last week in the kind of preview to this Manchester United Liverpool game. I think that decision is coming home to roost now. You've got an elite footballer joining an elite Premier League team, Premier League champions, in the best league in the world, and he's not fit. He's just been found out. You cannot go into that league not fit. And I think that decision to effectively go on strike, I think has come home to roost. I think it was a mistake in terms of you can argue the morality of how he behaved with. I think it's not the worst behavior that you've seen from a professional footballer these days. But I just think that he's shot himself in the foot. I think that he's given himself such a difficult start, which was unnecessary. And in this kind of social media age, you're just not given any time. And so gone are the days where you can think, okay, I just need a season, to get up and running. You're judged immediately. You're judged in that first game, in that first 2 games. And, the pressure's going to be on him. And he doesn't look happy. He looks out of sorts. He doesn't look like he knows what his role in the team is. And of course that is going to be on the manager. The manager's got to make that clear to him. But I think moreover than that is that, he's gone from a Newcastle team where he was the main man, that as soon as Newcastle were attacking, all the players were looking up to see, okay, where's Isak? Let's give the ball to Isak. That doesn't happen at Liverpool. Because the moment the team attacks, they're looking up and thinking, okay, where's Salah? Where's Gakpo? Where's Ekitike? Where's Wirtz? And so that's something that's an adjustment that he's going to have to get used to. But I think that the fitness, I think is the main issue with him. Is I just don't think he looks right. And if he's not fit, then he can't press in the way that we need our strikers to press. Given that Mohamed Salah is not someone who's going to be tracking back, so we do need the other players to pull their weight. Florian Wirtz is another one of our new signings. I thought he didn't start in Sunday's game, but I thought that he played pretty well when he came on as a substitute. But I think it's fair to say that he hasn't had the best start. To his Liverpool career. So that's another issue that we've got to deal with, that the manager's got to deal with and manage that process, manage that situation, manage that transition from the Bundesliga, where he was a star, to the Premier League, where he's trying to find his feet. And I think physically, the physicality is one of the main issues for Wirtz that he's going to have to work on. Another player that we brought in was Frimpong, Jeremy Frimpong at right back. And I'm just not sure what his best position is. And I hope that Arnie Slott knows, because that would be a worry. Is he a right back? Is he a wing back? Is he a wide forward? Because he's played all of those positions since he's been at Liverpool. And I think that's another area of concern for us, or an area that has meant that the form for Liverpool has been really patchy. And maybe someone like Frimpong is almost representative of the team in the sense that there's no consistency. There's no consistency, not just in terms of his performance, but in terms of where he's playing. He's playing in multiple positions in every game. And sometimes he'll come on as a sub as a right back, or he'll come on as a right wing forward. So that, I'm sure, doesn't help Frimpong in terms of trying to get him bedded into the team, to get him comfortable in the team as well. So, and then you go look at the other right back, Connor Bradley, who hasn't performed at the level that we saw last season. I think some of that is down to fitness. He came back from an injury, and he hasn't quite looked the same since then. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a serious injury that he's not the same player. I'm just saying that he's probably still playing catch up in terms of the kind of fitness and the rhythm side of things. But it also has to be said that the pressure is on now. Connor Bradley. Last season, there was no pressure on Connor Bradley. Last season, Trent Alexander-Arnold was the established number one right back. And even though there was all the speculation and almost an expectation that Trent was going to leave, there wasn't the pressure on Bradley that comes with being Liverpool's number one right back. And now he might not be the out and out number one, but he had the shirt, if you know what I mean. Trent left, and so Connor Bradley was already at the club, and Frimpong is the new guy. And so I think there's more pressure on him to perform. I think there's more pressure on him to make that shirt his. And maybe he's trying to do too much. Maybe he's trying to do too much. And I think he should just focus on the basics, focus on what he's good at, which is his energy, his tenacity in the tackle, in the defensive third. And I don't think that we've seen enough of that. And then obviously we naturally go to the other fullback, which is Milos Kerkez. And Milos Kerkez, I would argue, has had the toughest time out of all of our new signings. He came in at £40 million. I think one of the big mistakes that Arnie Slott has made this season is that he's brought Kerkez in and he's treated him like Liverpool's number one left back, and he's not. I argued last season that Andy Robertson needs to stay at Liverpool, and it should be Kostas Tsimikas that gets moved on, and that we get a new left back, and that was going to be Kerkez. But that they have to fight for that position, that there isn't a number one. And I think one of the issues is that Kerkez has, because he's started every single game, it's almost like Slot has said to him, okay, you are the number one. And I don't think that's right. I don't think he should be the number one. I don't think you should be treated like the number one. He's got to compete for that shirt. And Andrew Robertson, even though he didn't have the very, very best of seasons last season, we won the league last season. And he had a few games which were not very Andy Robertson-like. And that obviously set the alarm bells ringing with far too many people who, knee-jerk reaction that he's over the hill. And that is just simply not the case. But what Andy Robertson did need was competition. Competition to just get the very best out of Andy Robertson, because Kostas Tsimikas was always the number two. He was never seen as the number one. And now that we've got someone who is competing with Robertson, the times that Robertson has come on has shown that he's a better player than Kerkez at the moment. And let's not forget that when Andy Robertson did come to Liverpool, those years ago when Jurgen Klopp signed him, he didn't kick a ball for about 3 or 4 months. He was eased into that team and became the player that he did. And I think the same should be done for Kirkes. He's got to be eased into the team. He can play the League Cup games, the FA Cup games. He can play the odd Premier League game. But I think Andy Robertson, for me, is the number one. And Milos Kirkes has got to prove that position. And look, there should be no knee-jerk reactions with Kirkes either. He's a young player. He's 22, I think. And we haven't signed him for 6 months. We've signed him for the next 5 or 6 years. And so there's plenty of time for him to improve and to become the player that we all know that he can become. But right now is not the time to just play him every single game. I think he needs to be taken out of the team. The other signing that has hit the ground running is Hugo Ekitike, the one shining light from the new signings. And, what a player, and the impact that he makes every time he comes onto the field. He's got to start. He has to be a starter for Liverpool and just really play around that assumption that Ekitike is starting, and the likes of Isak, they've just got to prove themselves and to get into the team. The other issue that we're facing as a team are the players that are out of form. Principally, we've got to talk about Mohamed Salah. His form I just can't remember his form being like this. And again, with players at his age, you're always waiting to say, right, this is the moment that he's dropped off the cliff. This is the moment that it's all downhill. This is the moment where his legs have given up, and this is just going to be a slow, painful descent into him not being in the team and then eventually being sold. I don't necessarily think that's the case. It's not his physical fitness that I see as an issue. I still see him as being in great shape. I see him as being fairly sharp. I don't see a great kind of slowness in him. He's not as lightning quick as he was when he first came to Liverpool, but that was never going to be the case. But he's not kind of slow to react to opportunity. I think that would be a huge issue if he was slow to react to opportunities, and I don't see that. But I think even more worrying is his touch. That first touch, which used to be so assured, just seems to be letting him down. And even more shocking is his composure in front of goal. This is a guy that is just a goal machine and is in the team just to score goals. And it just seems that lately he's snatching at opportunities. I mean, the opportunity that he had on Sunday, where you just thought that this is going to go into the roof of the net, and he just absolutely kind of shanks it with his left foot, with his strong foot as well. It wasn't even his weaker right foot. It was his left foot, and it just looked so un-Salah-like. And so I think that's the issue, is that he's just genuinely bang out of form. And look, we can never know if this is just a temporary thing or this is a permanent switch that's been flicked, that, okay, that's it, his career is over. We just don't know. We'll only know in the coming weeks and months. But he's out of form and he needs to be rested. Whether you want to call it dropped, whether you want to call it what you like, but I think something has to be done with that situation. There are plenty of games to be played this season. I mean, there are 30 more Premier League games to go, and that's not counting the League Cup, Carabao Cup games. The FA Cup starts in January. We're only 2 or 3 games into the Champions League campaign. So there's plenty of games to go around for all of those players. And I know for someone like Arnie Slott, it's a tough one. it is a tough one. I think it's a balancing act for Slot in terms of what to do with Salah. You know, the optics are so glaring. You know, Liverpool is under the spotlight like few other clubs. It's only Manchester United really that gets the attention that Liverpool do. And these are the two biggest clubs in England, probably the two biggest clubs in the world in terms of fan base. And so, you know, the scrutiny is just constant. And so for Slot to quote unquote drop Mohamed Salah, I think he's going to have to do this carefully and manage this carefully and almost be like a politician, you know, for the outside world and the press as well, because you need to keep your senior players on side. And someone like, and it doesn't mean that you should be afraid of dropping them, but it's just like any job in politics, and being a manager at a club like Liverpool is a job in politics as well. You've got to be careful how you treat your senior players. You need to keep them on side, and you've got to be careful of the impact that it has, not just on that player, but on the rest of the team that looks to that player to get them out of holes. But look, you know what? That's what Arnie Slott is paid millions of pounds a year to do. And so he's going to have to step up and make that decision. Another player out of form, Alexis McAllister. He just looks off it, just looks unfit. He looks not even a yard too slow. He looks 2 yards too slow. He's not up to speed. And what it means is we're just getting overrun, I think, in midfield far too easily. Against midfields that we shouldn't be getting overrun by. You know, the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. Bruno Fernandes is a fantastic player, but he's not someone that should overrun you in midfield, and certainly not Casemiro. So I think that's another area of concern for Liverpool. The centre-backs. Now, Ibrahim Konate has been, I'd say, on balance, I think he's been pretty poor all season. But I thought he was excellent yesterday. And it was actually Van Dijk, who has been very good all season, who was below par. So again, we've got the inconsistency and instability in the fullback areas. And then we've got at least one of the centre-backs that doesn't perform. And so that doesn't help. I mean, even the goal that we conceded, I honestly think that Alisson Becker saves that. I know it's a bit harsh on Mamardashvili, and this is not to blame him in terms of that defeat. I don't blame him for that defeat. And I think he's a very good goalkeeper, and I think he's going to get better. But, you know, these small details, they add up and they get piled onto the other issues that we're facing. And then all of a sudden, we're losing back-to-back games. So I think Arnie Slott, I think he needs to get back to basics. First off, I think he needs to shore up this defence. And the way that you shore up this defence is to do what I think commentators have already said this. I've seen Gary Neville say this. A few others say this. And so this is no breaking news, although I do maintain that I thought of it first. And that is that you need to get your experienced defenders in, batten down the hatches and say, irrespective of how the rest of the team play, I don't care if it's Florian Wirtz, I don't care if it's Alexander Isak, I don't care if we're playing absolutely rubbish up front. No one is getting past this back four. And I think if you're Alisson Becker in goal, or Mamardashvili, obviously Becker's out injured, but I think you got Konate and Van Dijk as your centre-backs. You need to get back in Andy Robertson, an experienced player, vice-captain, serial winner. He just needs to come in and shore up that defence. And yes, after 75, 80 minutes, if he needs help, then you bring on Kirkes. But as a starter, it's got to be Andy Robertson. And I think it's time for Joe Gomez to come in at right back. Joe Gomez has performed fantastically well at right back every time we've needed him. And I think what that does, it gives us that solidity. at least down one side of our defence. And effectively, you've got 3 centre-backs then. And I think Joe Gomez needs to come, shore up that right side, and just defend. Just keep clean sheets. And we've got enough firepower that we might nick a 1-0, because that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at just a 1-0. Give me a 1-0, and let's build on that. And just play the players that have been performing. That have been performing. So you take out Kirkes, who hasn't been performing, and you put in Andy Robertson, who has been performing. You play Curtis Jones, who came on yesterday for Alexis McAllister. Alexis McAllister is a fantastic player, but he's had a tough season. Again, he had a very, I think he missed most of pre-season. So there are fitness issues there. It's not an ability issue. It's a fitness issue. And I just think that he needs to be taken out of the firing line. Curtis Jones comes in because Curtis Jones has been playing well. I thought that he should have started yesterday. I mean, he's a Scouser, and you're playing against Manchester United. You'd think that, you want to see that energy, that passion that you need in these kinds of fixtures. And even the main criticism that has been leveled at Curtis Jones over the years is that, he kind of he delays the pass, he dilly-dallies on the ball too long. Well, he didn't do that yesterday. As soon as he got the ball, he drove forward. He was looking for the forward pass. And a lot of the attacks, a lot of the good situations that we created yesterday in that second half was down to Curtis Jones. So I think that he needs to get more game time. I said that Mo needs to be rotated. So, as I said, whether you call it dropped or rotated, but he's got to be rotated. And the guy that's got to come in is Federico Chiesa. My God, this guy needs more game time. What does this guy have to do to get a game? Because he comes on, he always affects a game. He gets goals, he gets assists in the scraps of minutes that he's given. He's two-footed. He can play either side of that front line, and he tracks back. There were moments in that game where he was defending outside, running back from when we were attacking, chasing a player back all the way into our own half and winning the ball back. His attitude and his professionalism it's one of the reasons why he's already a fan favourite at Liverpool. He's already a fan favourite at Liverpool, but that shouldn't mask the fact that this guy has got the ability. He has got ability. He's a quick player. He's always threatening when he's got the ball, and he makes things happen. He made that goal happen yesterday. And so I think that he needs to be given game time. I honestly would give Mo I'd give Salah the Champions League against Frankfurt on Wednesday night. It's an away game. I'd give Salah the Champions League. But on Saturday, I think it is, we're away to Brentford. I think he's got to go for Chiesa. Give Chiesa a start. What's it going to cost you? We've already lost 4 back-to-back games, 3 back-to-back games in the Premier League. What's it going to cost you? You can't keep doing the same thing. So give Chiesa a run out. Give him a chance. And personally, I think that he can't do any worse than what we've done so far and the way that Mohamed Salah has performed so far. So I would give him the nod for the Brentford game next weekend and start with Ekitike. I think he's something special. I think he's the new signing that's hit the ground running. So play him, and let him build on that confidence, and let the other new signings look at him and feed off of him. And you know what? That's elite sports. That's elite football. You play the players who are performing, and right now that is Hugo Ekitike. And I've said this before. I know it's broken record time. I've said this millions of times before, even last season. I think we've got to become more energetic and in possession, and less obsessed with possession just for the sake of keeping possession. You know, I know it's hard because look, they're coming to Anfield, or we go to their ground and they're playing a low block, and so we can't counter-attack them. So it's hard to get around them or behind them with pace. You know, like we did when Mane and Salah were flying. A lot of those were, you know, teams that we would hit on the counter-attack. But eventually, once we'd won the Champions League and once we'd won the league, those teams that we played against wised up, and they no longer came attacking at us, so that Salah and Mane would, you know, completely tear you to shreds on the counter. They played a low block, but Klopp, you know, even though it moved to a more kind of possession-based style, the possession was done with intensity, and the passing was done with a speed, which it just seems to me that we've lost that. So Slott is coming in for criticism, which is just, again, it's inevitable. You're manager of Liverpool Football Club, the biggest club in England, the most successful club in England, one of the biggest clubs in the world. So yeah, you lose one game and, you know, you're going to get criticism. 2 games and it's like, well, what's happening here? You lose 3 Premier League games and a Champions League game, you know, alarm bells will start to ring. That said, I think that unsurprisingly, some of the social media outrage, I think, is ridiculous. I mean, that's not going to be your match-going fan. So I don't think that that's the opinion that most Liverpool supporters, most match-going supporters share. However, we do have concerns and we do have criticisms of Arnie Slott. And look, he has had probably one of the longest honeymoon periods that you get as a manager when you replace a legendary manager, which he did in Jurgen Klopp. You know, and now's the rocky patch. Now's the time where he really earns his money and his salary. And this is something that this is something that's going to make or break Slot. I really do, because I don't think I'm overplaying this, because this is not just the first time that he's going through this difficulty as Liverpool manager. I think this is the first time that he's experienced this as a manager. You know, 3 or 4 defeats in a row. He's not dealt with that. And so I think that how he comes out of this, I think, is really going to tell us where we're going to finish as a club this season, and how successful Arnie Slott is going to be moving forward. I don't think that at the ownership level, you know, we're not Nottingham Forest. You're not going to have the owner, you know, barging into the dressing room and, you know, having a fight with Arnie Slott. Although that would be an interesting watch, John W. Henry versus Arnie Slott. I think that FSG are going to back the manager. I wouldn't be surprised that come January that he gets a new contract, because, as we've said on this podcast on more than one occasion, and especially over the last week or so, where we've marked 15 years of FSG taking over at Liverpool, this is a very shrewd ownership. They're not prone to knee-jerk reactions. They're not prone to making decisions in the heat of the moment. They're very calculated, and they are very far-sighted. And I think that with Arnie Slott, I think they will give him a huge benefit of the doubt, in the sense that they are the ones who have sanctioned this wholesale squad renovation. And so they're going to have to back him to weather this storm and to bed these players in, which may take some time. It might be that this season is what last season should have been, which was just qualify for the Champions League and that'll be a good season. It may be that internally that's what FSG are looking at, that we've gone through such a squad upheaval that it might be unrealistic for us to look to win the league this season. We'll see. But it has been a tough 24 hours. It's been a tough couple of weeks. And the game's just come thick and fast, and we've just got to get back to winning ways and winning ways quickly. But we're going to leave it there. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back tomorrow, as I'm sure we'll be continuing to discuss the fallout from another loss in the Premier League. But then we've got to quickly turn our attention to Wednesday's Champions League trip to Eintracht Frankfurt, and then the weekend's trip to Brentford. So join us for all those pre and post match reviews. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.